In my experience as an ADHD dietitian, there are two really common eating patterns. The first eating pattern is not eating much during the day, so you might skip or eat very little for breakfast and then skip or eat very little for lunch, and then most of your calories are going to come at the end of the day. And a lot of folks who have this eating pattern may find that they are frequently eating past fullness by the time they come around to dinner. So what leads to this pattern? This often happens for people who may have a complicated relationship with hunger cues. So that could mean that they don't feel any hunger cues at all. So all day they're just not getting any signal. It could also mean that they are getting hunger cues, but their brain is not interpreting those physical sensations as being hunger. A really common example of this one in action is that a lot of ADHDers may actually be interpreting hunger as either anxiety or restlessness. There can be this feeling like time is speeding up and now they have to get a lot done and race against the clock, and they sort of get into this frantic state where they're trying to do a lot at once, but everything is failing and they feel like they're being chased by a bear. That can actually be a hunger cue. And the third option is that you do feel hungry, you do recognize that sensation as being hunger, but it's really, really hard to tear yourself away from whatever you're doing because focus feels very finite or other things feel more important. And so it's not so much an issue of not recognizing or not having hunger signals, it's an issue of prioritizing acting on those hunger cues in an appropriate time frame. But for all three of these, ultimately what's happening is your brain is deprioritizing eating in favor of doing something that it views as more important, which is why ADHDers who have this pattern may not actually eat something until that hunger cue is so pressing that it can't be ignored and it becomes the most important thing. Now, in my experience, this pattern is a lot more likely for people who are taking stimulant medications such as Adderall or Vyvanse, and that's for a couple of reasons. The first one is that those medications tank your appetite, so you are a lot less likely to feel hunger sensations at all. And the second is that those medications allow you to focus on different things, and so it quiets down a lot of the external stimuli, like body sensations, like other distractions. And so it becomes harder to notice when you're hungry unless you're very, very, very hungry. And so if you feel like you struggle with binge eating in the evening time, this dynamic might actually be a big part of why that's happening. Your brain is recognizing that you haven't got enough nutrition in the first part of the day. And so it's going to work really, really, really hard to make sure that you fill that gap and get all of your nutrition needs met before you go to sleep. And so what that functionally looks like is that you are more likely to have cravings. Those cravings are more likely to be for foods that are very high in calorie density. And you are going to be less in tune with your satiety cues, which means that it's going to be a lot easier to eat way past fullness. Additionally, undernourishment in the first part of the day can worsen executive function and increase impulsivity, which can make being mindful about your eating choices a lot more difficult. And lastly, it makes cooking really, really challenging because if you are waiting until you are starving to start the food preparation process, then who's going to have the time or the energy or the will to actually prepare something nourishing? So the natural result is that you are very likely to grab hyper-palatable foods and you're very likely to eat a lot of it. Now, the second really common eating pattern for ADHDers is almost the polar opposite. It's where you might snack all day long. In fact, a lot of people who have this particular pattern may eat few full meals because what they're eating looks like is really just a series of snacks. Now, if this is you and you feel like you're snacking all the time and you don't have impulse control around snacks, it is very likely that food is a major way that you are getting your dopamine and stimulation needs met. Food is a wonderful tool for stimulatory regulation. So if you are feeling understimulated, if you're feeling kind of bored and slow and uninspired, and maybe you have to do tedious tasks or reply to a bunch of emails, food is a really, really great way to bring those stimulation needs up, which can help you with focus and attention and task initiation and can make you feel, just better. If you are overstimulated, food is very helpful at calming your brain down and re-regulating your nervous system. And because of this function of food, I find that this particular eating pattern tends to be more common in folks who are not taking stimulant medication. And that's because the food is providing a very similar benefit to what you might get from a medication. And so it's not uncommon for people who are unmedicated to have a drastic difference in their eating habits when they go on stimulant meds. And as if these two patterns weren't fun enough, a lot of people actually fall into both categories. So sometimes they may not eat all day and then eat a lot at night, and other times they may snack all day. And which pattern you fall into in any given moment may depend on your environment, what's going on with you that day, how you're doing emotionally, whether or not you've taken your medications. And so it's really important to recognize that both of these patterns are happening because of what's happening in your brain, and they are supporting the state of being that you are in any given moment. And I really, really want to emphasize that there is nothing inherently wrong with with either of these patterns. There are a lot of ways to nourish yourself well. There's not one right way. So if you fall into one of these patterns, but you're doing great and you feel like it's working for you, that's amazing. If it's not broken, don't fix it because someone is trying to convince you that their way is the right way. There is no right way. But if you fall into one of these two patterns and it's not working for you, maybe it's not making you feel very good physically, or it's not compatible with what you need to do to meet your health goals, or maybe you're just struggling with exhaustion and brain fog and the way things are going is really stressful and it's something that you would like to change, then it's really important to recognize how these patterns are serving you. Because trying to change them through sheer force of will is never going to work because these patterns are how you are functionally surviving your current environment. And so if you want to change it, you have to make sure that you will continually meet the needs that this eating pattern is currently fulfilling. And regardless of which pattern you fall into, having some good, nourishing snacks that are also going to meet your stimulation needs are game-changing because snacking can often be a lot more accessible than trying to fit in full meals if you struggle to eat enough during the day. And for those all-day snackers, just cutting the snacks out entirely are probably going to mean that your stimulation needs and your dopamine needs are going to go unmet. So adjusting the snacks you reach for can be an easier, more effective, and more supportive way to improve your nutrition. And if you need some ideas for nourishing, satiating snacks that are going to meet your sensory needs, I've made a free sensory snack list with some guidance on how to use it and incorporate these snacks into your lifestyle. So check out the link in the description box below.